everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's good to see so many of you here. Welcome to our food service sales webinar. I'm joined by Sam, my esteemed colleague.
What up, Miriam?
Hello. We're going to get
Hello.
started in just a minute. I'm seeing a bunch more folks roll in as we start. So maybe while we're waiting for more folks to join, let's make some use of that chat. I would love to hear where everybody is dialing in from today, and maybe your favorite dish of the moment. Sam, where are you dialing in from today?
I'm in Tel Aviv.
Amazing. And what's your favorite dish of the moment?
Oh, well, my all-time favorite dish, which is a Sam Newman original. Right? It's what I call a deconstructed peanut butter cup.
Again with this.
Yes, because it's so good, right? It was my creation in culinary school. And you take a spoon and you stick it in a jar of any peanut butter that you want. And then you take that exact same spoon and stick it in a bag of chocolate chips.
Avant-garde.
Yes, right? And then you eat them both together. And then, because of the classy individual I am, you take that same spoon, you put it back in the peanut butter and back in the chocolate chips, and you just repeat
a double dipper situation.
Until someone comes in and calls you out on it.
There you go. Okay, well, that is not my favorite dish. I'm here in Richmond, Virginia, and I think I don't really have a favorite dish right now. I love everything, but I've been on a big ramen kick recently, making a lot of ramen. Wow. Okay, chana masala, yes, with a hot chili chutney. Chicago. I almost said Chicago. Chicago and cacio e pepe. I just was in Chicago and I actually ate cacio e pepe while I was in Chicago, Mike. So that's a good one there.
Did you know, and maybe this is just new news to me, I walked into Trader Joe's like a week and a half ago, and they had an entire shelf of like cacio e pepe in a jar.
Oh.
So you can just buy the sauce already made.
There you go. Interesting. I wonder how that works.
Didn't try it, but it looked delicious.
I'll keep an eye out for it.
Yeah.
All right. So it looks like we've got a bit of a critical mass. We're going to go ahead and get started. Just for everybody to know, the chat is open for you all for any questions as we go through. As I'm presenting the bulk of the presentation today, Sam will keep an eye on the chat. All right. So that should work for all of us. And you also have emoji reactions. So you should see an example just there. So if there's something that is particularly interesting to you or you want us to focus more on, that's a really easy way to let us know as we're going. Okay, so ready to get started, Sam?
I am ready.
All righty. Let me share my screen. I wonder how many times a day we say those words. Let me share my screen. That's the fourth time I've said it like that today. All right.
Lucky you.
Okay. Sam, can you see this all right? Oops.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. Great. So welcome everybody to our webinar today covering the 5 strategies for food service sales in 2022. I'm Miriam. I'm the head of content and research here at TasteWise, and I'm joined by Sam. Sam, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Sam. I come from the partnership side of TasteWise. I've been here for almost 2.5 years, actually. Right back when we were, I think, 7 people, and today we're 60.
We're growing big time.
We're growing a lot, so excited to be here.
And for those of you who were with us 2 years ago for the last time we did a food service sales webinar, Sam was also my partner in crime for that. Okay, so just to start us off, for those of you who are just joining, and those of you who have also been here for a few minutes, I would love if I could learn from all of you, what's the biggest challenge in your food service sales relationships right now? And another way to say this would be, why are you at this webinar, right? What made you register? What made you show up? We're all busy, so I'm really grateful that you all are here and spending your afternoon or evening or wherever you are in the world with us. So let's hear it. What's the biggest challenge that you're facing right now, or what do you hope to get out of today? And Sam, I'll let you maybe as we go read off a few of the suggestions. While people are writing, I also just want to remind everybody how we do webinars here at TasteWise. You'll see that the slides are pretty text and content heavy. That's on purpose. We'll be sending all of the materials, including the deck and the recording, to you after the webinar. So you'll be able to peruse them at your own leisurely pace afterwards as well. And you're welcome to take screenshots as we go throughout.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Someone wrote restarting after COVID shutdowns.
Mm,
Yep.
that's a big one. Yeah, we'll be talking about that today.
Loyalty and supply chains. Another one.
Okay.
Growing food service sales tip strategies.
Okay, great. You're in the right place.
Welcome. Yeah, shalom.
So loyalty and supply chains, post-COVID freezes.
Yeah. Staying up to date on beverage trends. Ooh, beverages is an interesting one. Hunter, we'll look at this a bit here, and yeah, beverages for food service is a unique challenge.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Sam?
Dan wrote, Mindshare, I want to help them. Need to get more details about food service and what will be best for them and thinking ahead of the curve. So
amazing. Love that. I'm just
be.
noting all of that down. Who said that one? Help them stay ahead of the curve?
That
Dan?
was Dan. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Dan.
Hey, Dan.
Awesome. All right, great. So that's a pretty good group of challenges and goals. So we're going to be talking about each of those today. And if you have any further questions and we didn't cover exactly what you wanted, feel free to just shoot us a note at live@tastewise.io afterwards, and we'll be happy to think about anything that you're thinking about together. All right. So let's start off. Sam, you want to kind of introduce us and just very quickly how we source today's insights when we're thinking about food service?
Yeah, for sure. So I think we can dive in here, and as we go throughout this next, I guess, almost 50 minutes, I think the crux of what we do is understanding, like where actually does the data come from that we're looking at here. And this specifically from a TasteWise side is something we're proud of, but I think it's more, okay, what is the source of the content we're going to talk about? So what we've done is we've aggregated data from multiple different sources. We've looked at social data from Instagram and Facebook. We've looked at actually recipe data. We've looked at a lot of menu data here. So we're looking at both on-site restaurant menus as well as delivery. That's super important. Delivery, right? Uber Eats, Grubhub, DoorDash, Deliveroo, Just Eat, Swiggy as well when we're talking the Indian market. So much has changed in the past 2 years as a result of COVID, specifically with delivery. I was actually talking to somebody last night who said, from a distribution side, he goes, we used to kind of approach delivery as this and now he goes, well, it's here. It's going to stay, and we need to figure out the best way to empower our restaurant partners to take advantage of this. So in total, we're looking here at 6 different countries, a little over 2 million restaurants. I think for today, we're going to specifically be focusing on the US and US data. We're looking at about 1.2 million restaurants in the United States. It's basically every restaurant that exists. And what it allows us to do is you can see is really identify gaps in the menus, understand what's going on with these restaurants, look at what their combos are offering, understand their different changes, and see as well really how delivery is shaping out. Another thing that I would add here is that this entire database of restaurants of 2.3 million plus locations is updated every month. Despite, I know sometimes I talk to others in the industry and they're like, oh, well, we touch parts of our database every week. We realize that you need to update every single restaurant every single month because so much can happen that if we do it once a quarter or every 6 months, we're going to miss a lot of those trends.
Yeah, good point. I also want to draw us back quickly to what Sam said about US data. So the examples that we use today will be sourced from the US, but the majority of what we're talking about today is just strategic recommendations for food service sales, and that will be relevant across any market that you're in. So kind of the use cases that I'll talk about will be sourced from the US, but you easily could do any of this in any market that you're working in. Great. All right. So our favorite thing, oops, wait, Sam, take us away. What are we going to be working on today?
Wait, Miriam, why don't we do this? You sing the background Celine Dion music.
Great.
Okay?
I don't know if I'm ready for that.
And I'll present the content.
Okay, love that. Maybe for another time.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
We often joke that food service and food service sales and working with this industry reminds us a lot of Titanic in the sense, right, that your food service clients are it is cold out there. Literally, it's February, but also there's so many things that are impacting them, right? There's COVID, there's mask mandates, there's shutdowns, especially when we talk to single locations. They've got shortage of staff, right? They don't even have people who can work in their restaurants. They're sitting there hanging on, supply chain issues, right? They're sitting there like hanging onto that door for dear life. And then you have the Roses of the world, right? Be like Rose, go, right? The vendors, the suppliers, the CPGs who are saying, right, I'm not going to push you off of this door, right? And let you sink, because as anybody raised in the 90s and 2000s is well aware, there were many ways that Jack could have floated on that door and stayed alive and would have been a much sadder ending. But right, so we thought to ourselves, you're there in the front lines, and we need data to make sure that, you know, Jack gets through this, that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel and stay afloat throughout this year.
Absolutely.
The one thing I would add to this, right, and the little heart in the middle, as you point out, Miriam, right, it comes down to that relationship, right? It comes down to the heart of the ocean. It comes down to finding that beautiful blue diamond.
Oh, Sam, that's gorgeous. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Sam and I were actually
part movie set. Yeah.
Yeah. Sam and I were actually joking. Jokes aside, I think this is actually a good point that so much of what we're talking about today is actually just premised on relationship building, right? That's what got us through 2020. It's what got us through 2021. So understanding the kind of tactics and strategies to keep your relationships really solid and healthy is the way to go. Sam compared it to couples therapy, and I don't object to that. I think it's actually a pretty solid way of thinking about this.
Good TV show.
Yeah.
What can we expect in 2022? And we're going to dive into this in much greater detail. But I wanted to initially start with the consumer trends that are happening. For those of you who are maybe at our last webinar where we focused specifically on trends, we're going to start to, as always, see trends permeate a lot more into the food service space, especially as restaurants reopen. Things vegan, plant-based, different types of functional health benefits. Sustainability, of course, is a huge one, and different categories within sustainability. You should always be talking to restaurant partners about this, because increasingly it's something that consumers are demanding a lot of, and governments also are making demands, right? I know certain states are banning certain types of styrofoam. So understanding general consumer trends, of course, is really important.
I'll just give a quick note, Sam, before you keep going. If you were with us on our previous webinar, you heard this as well, but we've seen a 24% increase in conversations around sustainability since 2020 amongst kind of general consumers in the US. So that's let's say quarter more, right? Conversations over the past like year and a half, 2 years, which is really significant.
Awesome. The second focus that we can expect to see is what we call the multi-table experience. And I almost feel like there should be some, background like experience, right? Like an echo. Because back in, when I was a kid, right, people just you went to the restaurant, you sat there, and that's what you did. And nowadays, there's the entire experience surrounding away from home is changing. So we're reshaping what in-person dining looks like, right? You now have a lot of QR codes. The menus are more digital. You don't necessarily have wait staff who can assist you when you get in. You just sit by yourself. Delivery, of course, is here to stay, right? And in many ways that partially competes with the in-person dining side of things. People might not want to sit in a restaurant, right? I went out with my grandmother because my grandmother had to make an appearance in this webinar, right? I went out with my grandmother a week and a half ago, and she called multiple places to see, do you have booths? Are they separated? Are people wearing masks? She didn't want to do delivery, right? We're reaching this stage where food and food service isn't just going to be served in the restaurant. It's going to be put in the back of a car, on a bike. Virtual restaurants are becoming a huge thing. It's an incredibly competitive space as well. There's still a lot of debate even on how successful virtual restaurants will be. I can guarantee you most of your food service partners are having virtual restaurant brands reach out to them to try to offer them a new revenue stream. And you really need to be the ones from the supplier side, the CPG side, to help them navigate that space. As the graph shows, and what we can see really in 2020 from kind of starting in February, March, a number of food and beverage experience conversations has really significantly grown in the past 2 years across all types of restaurants, which means that people are asking a lot more from the food service experience than they used to in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this kind of dovetails really nicely with general trends that we're seeing, and kind of going back to what Sam was saying about sustainability or functional health or plant-based, right? Consumers are becoming much more demanding and much more specific about what they are demanding. And one of those things that they're demanding is for an experience that really caters to their needs directly to go alongside the food and beverage that they're eating. So a statistic that I really like that we recently found was, so 1 out of every 3 people right now are mentioning some are discussing the experience of eating when they're talking about food and beverage. And that's really striking, right? That's a third of the public. So understanding how you can position yourselves to really capture that wave and really be, I think a crucial part of that is going to be really important strategically moving forward.
Awesome.
All right. So Sam, you want to tell us a bit about how you understand the goals for prospecting food service?
Yeah, I would, we break it down into really 4 main categories, right? Of course, one is to just define what is the market that we're going after. Who are the restaurants that we want to actually be talking to? Maybe they're single locations, maybe they're national chains, maybe they're those that work with Uber or those that aren't working with Uber. Maybe it's they have a certain menu item, and we'll look at a few examples here. So for starters, who actually do I want to be talking to? From there, it's how do I optimize the kind of go-to-market strategy that I have. So if I've got, let's say, 100 different restaurants that I can be partnering with, or that I already actually partner with, which ones should I be focusing on? Which ones are making moves that say, hey, talk to me, right? Often when we look at, say, the digital world in terms of selling technology, if I have an integration with Uber Eats, I'm going to want to reach out to every restaurant that in the past 30 days just added Uber Eats, because they're the ones that are my prime market. Or we'll look here in a minute, right? If I'm selling plant-based mayonnaise, go find every restaurant that's just added a plant-based burger. And from there, it will let me win more deals, because as anybody in sales knows, there's a finite number of hours in the day. And we need to make sure that we talk to all of the relevant people. And from there, it's how do I actually grow that account? How do I be the rose to the jack, the diamond in this scenario?
The alternate ending.
Yes, the alternate ending where they, the stock market doesn't crash and they all have a great life. Right? How can I maintain that relationship and continue to be that trusted advisor? Because right now, that's what food service needs more than anything, is advisors and trusted confidants that can help them navigate these new choppy waters.
Amazing. Well done with the metaphors there, Sam.
Next time we're going to do maybe Pretty Woman's not a good example, but we're going to think of other 90s rom-coms that.
Yeah. If you want in the chat, give us a movie and we'll make a
yes.
metaphor out of it. Cool. All right. So that leads us to the crux of what we're going to be talking about today. So how can we accomplish those kind of 4 macro goals using the 5 tactics that we're going to talk about today? So we're going to start by understanding, I've called this everyone who is eating, but essentially the total addressable market, right? How can we understand what consumers are actually doing? What are people eating and drinking, and why? Second, we're going to dive into geographic areas of interest. So thinking specifically for sales teams, geographic areas, and how you can best enable sales teams to be relevant and really precise in those moments. Third, we're going to detect the current state of a restaurant. So we're going to be looking at the day-to-day of your restaurant partners, what's actually going on, how can you streamline and make most efficient that process of understanding their day-to-day. We're then going to be taking a look at how to become a trusted advisor and what that actually means within food service sales. And finally, we're going to create what Sam was referencing before, but a lucrative multi-table experience, right? So how can we incorporate this new era of experiential eating and delivery, right? How can we make sure that we're tapping into that in the most productive way possible? I want to quickly note for us that there are 2 different tracks within food service sales. And what we're going to be talking about today is relevant for both of those tracks, right? There's the track that is focused on individual locations. So everything from, mom and pops to established independent locations that are maybe a little bit bigger. And the second is chains, right? Everything from smaller regional chains all the way through up through mega chains. The strategies that you have for those are going to be a little bit different functionally, but the strategies that we talk about today are going to be relevant for both. So Sam is going to, as we kind of go through, keep an eye on that. And if anybody has a specific question or specific interest in either chains or single locations, let us know in the chat, and we're happy to address both of those. Sam, I heard a little ping in the background during that. Is there a question that I can address?
Yeah, no, Dan told us next time our challenge is Jerry Maguire. So we are going to make this happen.
Dan, we're on it. Awesome.
Challenge accepted, yes.
Challenge accepted. No hesitation. All right. So let's start off with our first tactic, our first tip. We're going to be taking a look at what are people doing generally? How can we use trend insights in the market relevant to our categories to kind of kickstart this sales process? So I've pulled 3 separate pieces of data here that I want to walk you through it. But first, I want to talk about why it's important to even get a sense of what's going on in the market at all, right? You might say, I'm already covered with this. I know what I'm selling. I know why I'm selling it, right? What's the big deal here? But actually, in order to start off on the best foot possible and the strongest way possible, you really need to kind of holistically understand what's going on in the market by fusing together sources. And a lot of us, when we're working in food service sales, we kind of rely on that one source that we've been relying on for a while. And that's absolutely no shade to that. If that works, it works, and that's great. But things are changing so quickly that we need to be able to stay up to date on info around trends, motivations, right? The reasons that people are eating and drinking what they're eating and drinking, in order to come to your client with the most relevant and up-to-date recommendations possible, right? So if you understand that, I'm going to just throw out an example here, but let's say kombucha, since we're talking about gut health in just a moment. If you know that kombucha is, trending in home cooking, right? Let's say like home brewed kombucha, but it's actually decreasing on menus. If you just had access to retail data, for example, you might think it's not interesting, and you're really missing like a huge part of the puzzle. So understanding across the board, across different recipe, menu, and social trends, what's going on for your category and even your product is really crucial. But even more crucial than that is understanding the why behind those trends, right? The motivations, why somebody is choosing to drink, in that example, kombucha. It's kind of sets the scaffolding for the recommendations that you can make, and really establishes you, as we'll get to later, as a kind of market expert and as somebody that your client can really, really trust. So what's the practical application here? Let's walk through these 3 examples. So I've used gut health. Gut health is one of those motivations that's growing. You can see the interest in gut health over time here on the left, right? We looked all the way through December 2019 through December 2021. We've seen a growth over that kind of 2-year period, obviously with peaks and valleys and a little bit of seasonality over the winter months, but we can see that it's a trend that's really growing over time. And if we look at the top trending ingredients for gut health, so these are the ingredients that consumers are highly associating, and increasingly so over the past year, with gut health. We can see that that mango is number 2, right? We have smoothie, mango, sea moss, energy drinks, and basil. So just to kind of pick a hypothetical out of a hat here, if I am a mango distributor, right? Let's say I work in fruits and vegetables, and I have a mango, business going on, and I have pre-existing relationships with clients. I might say, hey, gut health is really relevant right now nationwide. A lot of consumers are looking for it. My product, my mango, is actually something that consumers are really excited about for gut health. Have you considered offering a smoothie and really marketing it as for gut health on your menu, right? That would allow you to reach more customers, would get more revenue for you, meaning the restaurant. And then on my end, right, in this hypothetical situation, that allows me to kind of strengthen that relationship and potentially even increase demand for my product. So this is a really easy way to kind of prepare both your sales reps when they're going out prospecting for the first time, but also your customer success people, right, in order to create relationships that are able to keep up with trends as they go on. Sam, do you have anything you want to add about that? I heard.
I think you bring up a few good points here. And one of them is, right, I think historically we've often just looked at restaurant menus to understand trends in this industry. And the challenge with that is that sometimes the industry, right, there can be things listed on restaurant menus, but if consumers aren't really interested in it, or they're decreasing the amount of time that they spend talking about it, it means that we need to be a lot more reactive to that. So by just looking at menus, right, we miss out on not only actually what consumers are saying, but I think to your point, why they do so. The example that I always like to give is, if you look at a company like Cully Power, Gail Becker many years ago, she speaks about this quite often. She says, I had two sons who were gluten-free, and there weren't really great gluten-free options. And so I went to go make a cauliflower pizza crust. And what we realized, actually, even going with, say, gut health, is that that's a much larger trend, right? Cauliflower is just one application of gluten-free pizza crusts. So what is the next one, right? What is that trend that I can pick up on and ride for a much longer term? Because if I realized, right, 5 years ago, plant-based was becoming a big thing, that's a much bigger trend. And then I can pick the ingredients and the products that I offer with that bigger trend. The other thing that I would add is that often when I speak to teams specifically about telling that story, what is the story of what you're offering, whether it be a CPG of a specific food product or even technology? What is the story? People connect to stories. I think often we've, especially from a sales side, kind of relied on marketing to do that. There's a lot of resource out there today, specifically for marketing, but also even for sales teams. Hashtag, go to TasteWise Spotlight. It's free, and download it. Where you can go and just say, right, that's my plug, but go in and see, this is the product that I'm selling. Give me free trends on it so that I can just take that data and go, because trends underscore everything we do in this industry.
Right. And I think part of what you're touching on there as well is that restaurants and food service can be such kind of a hotbed of innovation, right? Chefs are creating interesting things in the kitchen. They're able to pivot their menus based on season, based on availability, right? They're able to kind of bring in innovation a lot faster than CPGs are able to, right? Time to market in CPGs is much, much, much longer on the scale of 6 months to a year. Often, whereas in a restaurant, things are a lot more agile. So if you're able to be a partner with your restaurant partner in creating something kind of collaboratively and creatively, you can be at the forefront of innovation and kind of capture these trends as they're moving, instead of having to wait for R&D, right, on the back end on the other side of things to kind of catch up as well. Yeah, great. All right, so let's head on to our second recommendation here. So first, we've gotten a sense of what's going on in the market. We've talked about how trend insights are really crucial to kind of set the scaffolding, as I said before, for both your trend or for your sales pitches and for your relationship maintenance. So next, we're actually going to head to geographic evaluation, right? So you got to know the difference between different geographic areas. If you are a larger scale business, maybe you're working in different cities, different states, different countries even, which is something that we can discuss maybe in a future webinar. How can you enable your sales teams to be able to kind of parse through those macro trends and understand what's relevant for your specific audience? So I used, again, the example here of gut health, just kind of a quick trend kind of snapshot for you. These are both pulled from TasteWise Spotlight. So you can see that gut health in New York City and gut health in LA, in both cities, interest in gut health is increasing over the past 2 years. It's increasing more so in Los Angeles. We can see that in New York, the trend line seems to be fairly, I would say, growing, but fairly static. Whereas in LA, there seems to be a little bit of seasonality, right? Just a tiny bit, a little bit more of peaks and valleys. And so if I was preparing my sales team in New York City with my gut health specific product, right? I would want to focus on, and you can see here, energy. Energy is actually the dominating trending motivation for gut health, right? So I might want to package what I'm offering in those terms, knowing that consumers are going to be responding to that in a different way than in Los Angeles, where keto is actually the dominating trend. So for example, just to kind of back that up with the numbers for you data nerds out there, in New York, gut health is actually growing energy for gut health applications is growing 24% year over year, whereas in LA, keto is growing 50% year over year for gut health. So if you can kind of bring those numbers with you, even throw in a few charts and say, hey, gut health is really relevant in your area, Mr. NYC restaurant, right? My product fits really well for both gut health and energy. How can we collaborate to create something really impactful that your consumers will love or your customers will love? That's already something that you're using to both inspire trust and bring more revenue in the door. We'll also talk in a little bit about when we're thinking about geographic, also about signals from restaurants. So not just about, trends in the wider market, but also about, restaurants opening, closing, menu changes, pricing differences, all that kind of stuff per geography, because that's a really interesting and important thing as well. But for this kind of second tip, strategic tip, it's thinking about how one size doesn't fit all when it comes to food service sales, right? And understanding the performance of trends and needs in your area and tailoring your strategies accordingly is really critical. Sam, anything you want to add about this?
No, as a native New Yorker, proud of my state.
Proud of your state.
I'm gonna say there.
And I just want to note for us as well that this data here is sourced from menus. So we're looking at actually the menu mentions of gut health, both in New York City and LA. But you could also do this for social and recipes, kind of bringing back that holistic view that we were talking about at the top of the hour. All right.
Let's head to actually why you say that real fast, Miriam. Something I would also point out here.
Sure. I'll go back.
It's interesting. I think historically, and we're starting to see this with brands, especially in the food tech space, right? Where people say, like everyone knows it's Impossible Burger. They know it's Beyond Burger because they put that on the menu, right? We're starting to see as well menus start to mention these types of things. They're starting to call out, this is good for your stomach, right? Or they've got those little corn things, right? They've got little symbols that mark what
certifications, right? yeah.
Certifications, right? Or like, this is vegan, this is vegetarian, and we're starting to see also gut health and different functional benefits. So it's something as well that like people look for, and consumers are demanding a lot more of that. And the ability to work with your partner in a specific area, or even just in general, to say, here once again are those trends, and like apply that to the menu. Tell people this is a good drink for your stomach, because they'll think, oh, they can relate to that much more, and it will cause them to want to buy it.
Yeah, exactly. And as consumers are becoming, we talk about this in depth. If you've joined us for any other webinar podcast, plug for the podcast, Food Intelligence podcast on Spotify. We did a whole episode about this, but consumers, as they become more kind of sophisticated in their knowledge because of this digital world that we're living in food and beverage, they're expecting a lot more from their food and beverage. So if you can do the work for them, and help your food service partner kind of do that research in advance, right? And have it on the menu. I know just anecdotally, like if I go out somewhere and I'm looking for, let's say I have a like bloating or something like that, right? Like not fun to talk about, but everybody experiences, right? I know that I want something that can help assuage that discomfort, right? But I'm not really gonna, I know kind of what I want, what I need, but I'm not gonna sit there and Google it the whole time, right? So if I see a menu that says, hey, try this kombucha with blah, 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 right? That's going to grab my attention immediately and also get my dollar. Sam, did you know I was going to talk about bloating on today's webinar?
No, Miriam, you.
Proud of you.
Proud of you.
Thank you so much.
Bring your true self to the workplace. Yeah.
I am. All right. So let's think about part 2 of that geographic exploration. So in that first one, we looked at kind of how trends perform in geographic areas. So now let's think about how you can prioritize your client lists in those areas for both single locations and for chains. And the way that this really works is by getting granular, right? Start out big, dive down a little bit deeper. So the example that I've given here, I picked Chicago just because I was there recently. I think Dan was the one who's in Chicago. So I took a look at the dominating claims in Chicago food and beverage right now. So this is in restaurants. This is in the general landscape of food and beverage in Chicago. What are people talking about most commonly when they're eating and drinking? So we're seeing a lot of interesting experiential stuff, right? So like fun, attractive, local, easy, healthy, gourmet, right? A little bit of Asian. So lots of interesting things going on here. And if we drill down a little bit further and look just at restaurants occasions, so when people are eating out, when they're dining out at restaurants and they're talking about what they're eating and drinking, what are they talking about the most in Chicago? We can see this emergence of cuisines, right? So we're seeing that French shows up, Japanese, Asian, Mexican, American, right? Local is actually decreasing. Just a note for how to read these charts, the y-axis here is year-over-year change, and we're looking at social data. And over here, we're looking at social penetration, so the establishment or the frequency of occurrence. So we can see that really these cuisine-oriented claims are actually growing the fastest. And finally, if we drill down even further, we can see in single locations, so not chains, in Chicago, what are emerging trends, so are emerging claims, so things that are just starting to capture consumer interest. We can see that kosher is actually growing quite significantly, about 200% year over year. We can see that Sichuan, fermented, Filipino, Basque, Cantonese, right? So we've got a lot of interesting sort of like cuisine, ethnic things going on here as well. So if you're able to kind of drill down and find an association between your product and any of these types of claims, right, depending on how big or small you want to use these kind of filters, if we want to call them that way, in prioritizing your client list, that could be really successful, right? And that's a really great way to kind of arm both internally yourself in understanding who you want to prioritize and where you want to prioritize, but also externally, again, for those pitches and that relationship maintenance, coming kind of armed with these pieces of data. Does that make sense? I know this is a lot on the screen, so I want to make sure that that's clear. Sam, anything you want to add about this specifically?
No, I guess we should go to Chicago and try some kosher food, man.
I guess we should. I was just in Chicago and was looking for kosher food because I do kosher. So it's definitely something to keep an eye out for. I want to quickly point out what we talked about before for chains versus single service or single location, excuse me. So it kind of drilling down granularly is probably more important for those of you that are talking to single locations, right? So when you get down into a zip code and understand, if you're talking to Joe Schmo's, I don't know, kosher Sichuan pizzeria in Chicago, right? You would know that, kind of what's going on in the immediate neighborhood from both a competitive lens all the way through to pricing changes to trends, all that good stuff, right? That's kind of your bread and butter. You want to be really focused locally. But if you're looking at chains, and especially mega chains, you're not going to be so zip code focused. You're not going to be focused so granularly geographically. But there are going to be regional differences, right? So if you are, let's say, prospecting Taco Bell and you're able to kind of see regional differences between those Taco Bell locations and able to make recommendations for your product based on what you're seeing regionally, that's also interesting and important, I think. So that's kind of how I would address chains versus single locations when we're thinking kind of strategically using this geographic tip. All right, let's head to the next one. Did I hear a question, Sam?
Aaron asks, what does 0.4% social penetration equate to in terms of volume? Like 10K post mentions or 100?
Great question. Where are we looking? Like over here? Over here. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So 0.4. So over here, we're looking at emerging. So these are much less in volume than we would see something like over here, right? These are the dominating claims. So I don't have the exact number on me. It's probably hovering right around 1,000 for this particular, actually, because we're in Chicago, it's going to be lower. It's probably around a couple hundred. But just to note, when we consider things to be emerging, they have to have reached a certain threshold. So we're not just looking at the, one or two examples of this, right? It has to be something that has reached a critical threshold. That's something our data science team works with. I don't have the exact numbers, but these are definitely smaller in scale than the dominating claims, but still significant enough to watch. I can get you that number afterwards if you're interested. All right. Anything else, Sam? Sorry. I know it's annoying to say anything, but I can't do the chat, so I want to make sure. Okay,
Aaron says thank you, and Paula asks, is this information exclusive for the US? And Paula, currently we're looking at US numbers, but as Miriam mentioned at the beginning, these trends apply across all markets.
Yeah, for sure. Well said. All right, so for our third strategic tip, we're going to be thinking about the day-to-day of our restaurant partners. So the current state of affairs when you walk in the door to your restaurant partners, what's actually going on there. We really want to understand what the day-to-day looks like because things are changing so rapidly. If you can really have your finger on that pulse without them having to come to you and tell you what challenges they are experiencing, you'll be positioned even better to be which our next tip is about, a real trusted partner. So I want us to take a look at this map. I really like this map. This is from, this is just New York City open data. You can find this online and I'm happy to send out the link. It's a really interesting and cool kind of city resource. And you're able to see all of the open restaurants in New York City. You can drill down to things like, alcohol licenses and lots of outdoor seating, lots of things. And it's always being updated based on the current affairs of COVID, right? So outdoor seating, mask mandates, all that kind of stuff. So if you look at this particular map, right, this is a huge amount of restaurants, right? We were looking at New York City in the previous slide, tons of new restaurants here. So we have to kind of ask the questions. Is your food service customer or restaurant, let's say that you're working with a chain, right? Are they opening up new locations? Are competing locations opening up in their area? Are there concepts that local restaurants are taking risks on that you think you should recommend or can tap into in the same space? Is pricing changing on your specific partner's menus? Is it changing on your competitors' menus, right? There's so many different pieces of data to keep track of when you're working, especially in bigger cities like New York, right? Where there's literally, you could come up with billions of data points here to be looking at. So if you can demonstrate expertise on what's actually happening on the ground, both inside kind of inside the brick and mortar of your restaurant partner, or if it's a virtual restaurant, right? I guess somewhere in the kitchen. If you can demonstrate that you understand what's happening both internally, but also in the kind of the atmosphere around them that they're swimming in, you'll be able to kind of really pinpoint their challenges before they're even aware of them. So it's really kind of comes down to the ecosystem. How can you be, as we said before, the rose? This is kind of the alternate ending, right? Look at both of them. They've aged 20 years. They look great. How can you be the rose to save the other jacks in the water here, right? If we go back to that metaphor, and you can really kind of think of this as kind of a scooper upper. Like, how can you scoop up everybody else on the block of your restaurant partner, right? And really expand your business and provide solutions for people who may not even be aware that they're looking for them yet. I think I'm gonna leave that there. Is that clear, Sam?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Cool.
So be Rose on steroids.
Be Rose.
Put a whole bunch of people on that
yeah.
on that
door.
Build
a boat, build a life raft out of that door. Yeah. All right.
Build a bear Titanic style. Yeah.
There you go. Build a bear Titanic style, Sam. That is the takeaway from this webinar. All right. So let's think then, this is kind of where we've been heading with a lot of the recommendations that we've been giving. So we're looking at the fourth recommendation here. So how can you use all of this information to become a customer expert, right? A trusted partner. I think Dan had said earlier that he was looking for tips for helping food service partners and helping them stay ahead of the curve. It looks like a few others were asking about loyalty and how to help consumers kind of post-COVID freezes, how to come back. So this is really what it comes down to, right? This is that moment of communication and relationship support that we were talking about at the top. So the way to do this is to really become attuned to the ebb and flow of your partner's business, right? And really be able to identify where the revenue gaps are in their strategy that you can help plug really, really easily. So I think the best example here, and we can think through kind of a few things that are accomplished by doing this. The best way to do this is through menu gaps, and we're going to take a look of physically what that looks in just a moment. But let's pretend that we are looking at a menu snapshot from one of our restaurant partners, right? And we see that they have just started offering a gluten-free bun. They've just brought out a plant-based patty. We know that this plant-based, an equivalent of this plant-based burger is actually being marketed as keto-friendly down the street. We kind of understand what's going on with this plant-based burger, and we happen to be plant-based mayo, right? That's what we sell. That's what we distribute. So I could come to my partner and I could say, hey, I see on your menu you have this really exciting new dish. Why don't you consider leveraging our existing relationship and actually bring on board this new product we have, right? Bring on board this plant-based mayo, reach more customers, and take up your offering a bit. So it's a really that's an easy way to expand within the relationship you're already in a little bit more of your business. So it's scalable, because you're coming and you're saying, here's a trend we're noticing in the market. Here's something that we're noticing on your own menu. Here's how our stuff complements your stuff. And here's how you can use it to generate more money. Another aspect of this, so that's kind of the pairing aspect. The other aspect is pricing, right? So if you're able to understand, let's back up a second. Single locations, and we're specifically thinking about single locations here. It's a little bit different for chains. Single locations don't have an entire team of people who are able to advise them on how to price things, right? Oftentimes at chains, and especially mega chains, you've got whole teams of folks who are able to come in and say, hey, this dish that we've been testing and focus grouping for a long time, it should cost X amount of dollars in X city, and across the board, right? But single locations don't actually have that. And so they're kind of really shooting in the dark. They're trying to cover their expenses and make revenue, but it's not entirely clear if something should be, like we have on the side, $14 versus $10. So as a distributor, if you're able to come in and give advice on how much to charge for a product or for a dish, right? You're making sure that your restaurant partner can competitively price your product, which is good for your wallet, right? But you're also giving them a resource that they don't have on their own. And you're able to do this by kind of coming with information on competitor pricing, right? So that previous slide that we just looked at with the map, understand how much the place down the street is charging for the very same thing. Other restaurants just in the area, right? National averages. ways to experiment to maybe lower the pricing if it's really out of range for their typical price offerings on their menu. So if you're able to come with all of this information and offer it to them, you're really just kind of wrapping up a gift in a bow and giving it to them and saying, hey, I care about you. I want you to be making money. You also want to be making money for yourself, right, by expanding your business. So this is, as someone else on our team, Ron, recently said, this is the kind of 2022's corporate gift basket, right? This is the kind of, I guess, informational version of that, right? You're packaging things up in a way that's really accessible and relevant for your partners, and making sure they understand that you know them. Any questions?
Can I add something to this, Miriam?
Sure, please.
I think what you've described amazingly, right, is when you specifically are focused on single locations.
Yeah.
Something to add here when we talk more from a chain side. And this often can come right from, let's say you're a CPG, we can actually even maybe go with this example, right? Let's say you're pitching Taco Bell. And one of the biggest challenges I would say in terms of working with a chain such as Taco Bell is that there's thousands and thousands of locations, which means that if they want to add a new item to a menu, right, it can be a big challenge for them because you have to then coordinate distribution to get to every single Taco Bell location. So often, if you're pitching more of these corporate chains, you have to sit there and do a lot of research and be their partner in terms of their own strategy. And then I think that's really where a lot of the trend research comes into play, because let's say you are selling Taco Bell cheese sauce, and you also have a mole sauce. Now, maybe you've already sold that mole sauce to Taco Bell and it's being used on a different product, right? Or it's something new that you just came out with. Now, the good thing is that because you're already working with that partner, you've already got that distribution channel up and running. And so what it means is that you can then more easily just add something to that distribution channel. If you don't yet have that line of distribution going, it's important to know, like, listen, you've got maybe these few items already on your menu. Have you thought to combine them together, right? Have you thought to bring the cheese, maybe it's cheddar and mole, and make a cheddar mole sauce, and then have that data to support it? And so when you work with a chain, this still applies. It just changes a bit of how you approach it, and the degree to which you can go and kind of push the boundaries of new types of ideas.
Yeah, I really like that. You're showing up as somebody who's trustworthy by Sam, you used to say this, show me that you know me, right? You're showing them that you know them, you're anticipating their pain points, and you're being a kind of creative collaborator, right? You're bringing in a little bit of that culinary expertise, which is an exciting resource. All right. So as we head into our final kind of 10 minutes here, I want to talk about our final strategic tip. But first, I want to introduce a poll. So Sam, if you wouldn't mind, if you could head over to the poll section where the chat is. You see there's like a little area that says poll. Press the 3 buttons and say publish poll. You should see.
Wait for it. Can I do that?
You should be able to. If not, let me know and I can get out of this.
Yeah, I can't do it.
Okay. So give me just a moment, everybody. All right, so we should be able to see a poll here in the chat. You can see it? Good. All right, so I want to kind of take a break for just a moment, just because I've been speaking a lot and I want to give you all a chance to engage. So how as a business are you taking into account the digital changes in food service? So thinking about things like ghost kitchens, delivery, QR menus, all the stuff we talked about at the start. Kind of how are you having conversations, if you are at all, with your partners about their delivery strategy within this context? So I want to give a couple seconds, everybody, to pop in your answer. Your 3 options are: you're actively talking to your restaurant partners about their delivery strategy, you're occasionally discussing it, and you're winging it, never talking about it at all. And absolutely no judgment on any of these. These are things that we see across the board, all different kinds of choices that people are making. So let us know honestly what you're doing.
Perhaps we need some background music, Miriam. So we'll skip the Jeopardy theme song.
Perhaps a siren.
Yeah, that too, right? Every night in my dreams, I see you, I feel you. That is okay. We'll stop.
Great. I think that was great. Do we have any?
And 20 people left the webinar. Yeah.
All right. Any updates on the poll? If there's anything that's coming in.
Yep, it says 60% are actively talking to restaurant partners, and 40% are occasionally discussing it. The good thing is that no one is winging it. So
Great. Awesome.
Good job, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, everybody, for engaging with that. So you all have kind of clued into one of the massive lessons that we learned from 2020, right? As Sam said at the start, delivery is no longer a nice to have. It is a crucial part of any strategy for any food service. And the choice to have delivery or not is an active decision, right? It's not a passive one, it's an active one. So actively talking to your restaurant partners about their delivery strategy, we absolutely recommend. That is part and parcel of creating this multi-table experience that Sam introduced earlier. And the way to do that and understanding kind of how you can create awesome experiences for customers, no matter where they are eating your product as provided by your restaurant partner, is understanding the delivery landscape, right? You want to dive deep into delivery and help your partners understand how they can turn delivery into a profitable strategy. So if we take a look at this graph, and I'm gonna use this as kind of a case study for the point here, we can see this overtime graph of gluten-free items. All right. In the blue, we can see the inclusion of gluten-free items named specifically for gluten-free on menus, right? And that's up 216% year over year. So we can see that this pretty significant trend line here of menus mentioning gluten-free more. And down below, we can see the very same measurement, but for delivery menus only. So we can see that delivery menus are not actually focusing on gluten-free as much as we see on kind of general menus. So why is this important? We can see that the inclusion of gluten-free on both delivery and standalone menus is actually increasing the same rate, roughly, right? Around, let's say, 215% year over year. But we're actually seeing that the penetration is actually way lower, right, on delivery. So this is kind of cluing us into something. It's showing us that gluten-free is definitely a thing on menus. It's growing fast, right? It's important, but it's being not included on delivery menus at a pretty significant rate. So the question becomes why, right? Why are restaurants choosing to have something on their menu that they're excited about? They've named it as gluten-free. They understand the gluten-free trend, but they're not including it on delivery, right? So what is the reason there? And we'll talk about that in just a moment on another slide. So what is the reason for not including? That's another question. And you want to be able to kind of anticipate that for your restaurant partners. So let's take a look at how we do that at Tasterise. So we like to use something that we call menu gaps, and you could do this manually for sure by taking a look at, you could look at your restaurant partner's presence on Grubhub, you could look at DoorDash, you could look at Uber Eats, and you could understand kind of where is your product showing up on one place and not on another. You could do that manually. The way that we do it at Tasterise is by using AI and aggregating all of this data together. To show us where restaurants are offering something on one menu, but not on another, right? I mean, that's what we call a menu gap. So the example here that we're showing you, we're seeing kind of a prioritized list of restaurants here ranked by social popularity. So that's what these numbers are over here. We can see restaurants nationwide that do offer kombucha on at least one menu, but they don't offer it on all of the menus where they could. So let's look at, I don't know, East Village Farm and Grill, right? We can see East Village Farm and Grill located in New York City. It's a bar, a single location. It's about $2 signs for price level, so kind of mid-range. It doesn't have a great delivery rating, but it does offer kombucha on its Grubhub menu, but it does not offer it on its Uber Eats and its DoorDash menu, right? So already we're saying, okay, let's say I'm a kombucha distributor, right? My client is using, or my customer is using my product, my kombucha product on one menu, but not on two. So the question becomes why, right? And we're going to talk about that in just a second, but I want to draw attention, and this is for, I believe Hunter was the one who was asking about beverage trends, right? If we total up all of the menu gaps for non-alcoholic beverages in the United States, so all of the areas where we're seeing this kind of red line here, right? Where we're seeing that a restaurant is including something on at least one menu, but not on all of the ones where they could. If we total up all of that, and assume that were every single restaurant to fill that gap tomorrow, and were they to get, let's say, only 5 orders of that missing dish, product, whatever, over the course of the year, that's a pretty conservative number, right? Just 5 a day. You would end up with $2.7 billion in additional revenue for the food and beverage industry. And that's just for non-alcoholic beverages delivery gaps. Okay.
Woohoo.
Which is wild, right? That's an insane number. And you could do this for any, you could come up with this kind of calculation for any category, but specifically for beverages, for non-alcoholic beverages, that's $2.7 billion that are left on the table each year. So if you could come to your restaurant partner and you could say, hey, let's use another example, Burger Irway. I see that you are offering kombucha on Uber Eats and Grubhub. That's awesome. You have an awesome delivery rating. So glad that that's working out for you. I see that you're not including the product on DoorDash. What can I do to make that easier for you, right? How can I help you put it on there? It could just be as easy as, adding it to the menu. Or it could be a little bit more complicated. So that's what we're going to look at for our last slide today. So we're going to use menu gaps as kind of this conversation starter to understand what lucrative opportunities exist. So the way that we see it, and thank you for your patience with my slightly less than beautiful flowchart, but why is a restaurant missing an item for delivery, right? So why is that Burger Irway example missing kombucha on its, I think it was its Grubhub menu, okay? So there are three potential categories that we could be looking at here. Whether it could just be a simple oversight, right? That they just didn't realize that they didn't have it on their third menu, or they're investing a lot more in, let's say, Grubhub and Uber Eats, and so they sort of let DoorDash fall to the side or whatever it is, right? But understanding that there's a difference there and bringing it to their attention and helping them understand that that's just money that's being left on the table, that is one tactic. The second is that perhaps the item is not actually a good fit for delivery, right? So maybe in that example of kombucha, maybe they serve their kombucha on tap, right? It's not a bottle, it's on tap, right? So how would you deliver a beverage item that is like a fountain drink or an on tap, right? That's not particularly delivery friendly, given the gig economy and how restaurants don't actually have much control over how their items end up at their customer's doorstep, right? And they're depending on these like Grubhub, Uber Eats, DoorDash, whatever their delivery systems. So perhaps that's why they didn't include it, because they know that historically their kombucha has not traveled well. Maybe it's lost its fizz, it's gotten warm, whatever, right? It's not a good fit for delivery. So Sam, I want to give you just a second. We only have a few minutes, but I really appreciated that story that you told about the omelet, because I think that's a great example here of how you can think about seasonality, in terms of delivery. So I'll give you like a second or two to tell that one.
I guess I can. Yeah. So where I grew up, proud upstate New Yorker over here. There, when COVID kicked off, there's a diner in Rochester, New York that started delivering. It's known for its breakfast, right? And it kept delivering omelets. And the challenge was that when you eat omelets in a restaurant, it's delicious. When you put an omelet in a box and try to send it for a half an hour, it doesn't really survive ever so well, right? I often think if you tried to offer cheesecake as a delivery menu item in Arizona in July, it would just show up as completely melted. So I think increasingly a lot of the conversations that from a CPG side and distribution side that have to be had with restaurants is what actually is good for delivery and what are the profit margins, right? Are there certain desserts that can survive outside in a box in a wide array of weather that you can still make a lot of money on? So those are conversations that should come from the vendor side, because often the restaurants just don't even have time to think of those types of things.
Right. And this is a great example of how, coming prepared with insights isn't just a nice to have, it actually can have actionable results for your partners, right? So if you're able to come to them and say, hey, I noticed that you don't have cheesecake, and maybe they tell you that it's because of the weather or whatever, right? Delivery. If you can say to them, okay, I understand that most people in your area actually love cheesecake because they love, I don't know, think of something, right? Like, I don't know, they love, let's say it's
great.
Right. But let's say it's a dairy-free cheesecake or something like that, right? They're loving it because it's the only dairy-free item in the neighborhood. We're really missing an inclusion there. So how can we work together to think about another dessert that does travel well, that does fit that why, that motivation? So if you can come armed with not only insights, but actually answers, right, and new ideas, that's a really great way to help position yourself as a trusted expert in the field. Finally, a restaurant might be missing an item for delivery. It's kind of related to oversight here, but as part of a combo, right? So combos, it's one of those things that, buy a pizza, get a drink, buy a burger, get a drink, something like that. The consumers have to pick from, or the customers have to pick from a series of drinks. So you can see here, maybe like picking from, lemonade, Pepsi, I don't know, Fanta, whatever, right? You want to make sure that your product, if you're a beverage distributor, is actually located front and center in that combo option, right? And it could be that perhaps they forgot, they didn't put it on the list, or there was some other reason why they were prioritizing those other beverage vendors ahead of yours. So you want to have that conversation. You want to show up and say, hey, I'm seeing that we're missing my product here. I think it would be a really great inclusion for this combo. What can I do to make sure that it gets on the list? And that's another kind of quick and easy example of having that conversation. All right, so to round us out in our final minute today, I want to go over a few questions for reflection and takeaway. So the questions that you can be asking yourself as you're building your strategies for 2022, or probably more likely refining your strategies for 2022, right? We're already almost to March. You can be asking yourself the following questions, right? What are your food service customers' biggest needs right now? Do you know? Are you aware of it? I'm assuming that you are, but how granularly are you aware of it? Are you aware of the changes in technology and delivery and all of that kind of thing? Are you aware of trend performance in the area? What kind of ingredients, what kind of motivations are going on for their consumers? And that's exactly the second question. What trends and motivations will be most influential for your customer's brand or your customer's location this year? How are you identifying when your customers need your product and when they'll be using it?
Good question.
How many deals have you lost with existing clients because the timing wasn't right? And how much business have you expanded in your client relationships over the last 2 years, and what did you do to get there? So I invite all of you to just kind of reflect on this. If there is an answer that you come up to this question that you want our help with, please shoot us a note. We would love to brainstorm with you ways that you can use your existing resources to really build sustainable and kind of productive and healthy relationships with your food service clients. Feel free to shoot us a note either at info@tastewise.io or live@tastewise.io. Both of those will come directly to me. If you have any questions, any comments, anything that you'd like help on, we're honestly here just to be a resource for you. We love this stuff. Sam is a food service expert. I love working with, as you know, research and content. That's my day-to-day job. So we're absolutely here to be a resource for you. You'll also, if you reach out to us, you can get a free list of potential restaurant partners for your category. So when we were talking about the prioritization and identification of your addressable market, we can help do a little bit of that work for you if you let us know that you'd like us to help you. And that's it for today. Any final questions before we log off? We're sitting at around 3:01, so I want to be conscious of people's time. But if there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat.
Thanks, Miriam.
Thank you, Sam. Was this helpful for everyone? Maybe we can do like a little emoji reaction just to get a sense if this is valuable information.
I'm giving it a thumbs up.
Awesome. Great. All right. Thank you, Paula. Appreciate you being here. Thank you, Aaron.
Dan as well.
Thank you, Dan.
Hunter too.
Hunter, Patrick, Elaine, Mike. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Really, really appreciate it. And wishing you all a really productive and wonderful end to the week. It's getting warm here in Virginia, so I'm enjoying the weather. I might go for a walk in a little bit. All right, thanks. And thanks to Sam. Big thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Miriam.
Daniela, let's note this down for ourselves, Sam. Daniela asks, what is the best way to approach a big prospect, like a restaurant chain, for example?
Yeah, Daniela, that's a question that takes more than 30 seconds to answer.
But we'll note it down and we'll get back to you.
But we'll note it, and feel free to reach out to me. I can put my that's my email at tastewise.io. Happy to find time to talk about that.
Great idea. Okay, thanks everybody. Good. See you later.
Bye, Miriam.
Bye, Sam. Bye, everybody.